Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and this is a breakdown of Star Wars The Bad Batch Season 3, Episode 6, Infiltration, and Episode 7, Extraction. We're gonna break down all the Star Wars animation Easter eggs and other details that you might have missed, including a big theory about who that masked clone assassin really is. We open on Senator Singh and his droid GS-8 from Season 1, Episode 10, Common Ground, being led by Rex discreetly through these streets. We see that they're being tracked through the scope of a clone assassin. Now, Senator Singh comes from the planet Raxus Secundus, or just Raxus, and he was a separatist who publicly denounced the Imperial occupation, leading to his arrest and extraction by Clone Force 99. Singh is voiced by Alexander Siddiq, who is perhaps best known for playing Dr. Bashir in Deep Space Nine, and a number of other roles. His droid is voiced by Sean Clifford, who played Fleabag's sister in Fleabag. We see these neon signs in Orbesh, one A&DO wraps, and to the right, a smaller one, snow cones. And snow cones shows up on a few other buildings. But yes, Rex is back this episode. Now, they referenced Rex and Echo being elsewhere back in episode 2 of the season, and when Echo showed up without Rex on Pabu, I was a little curious what he was up to. But we actually saw Rex last back in season 2 episode Truth and Consequences, when Rex asks the Bad Batch to help him and Chuchi get evidence of Rampart's attack on Kamino to expose him to the Senate, but Palpatine uses this to pass the defense recruitment bill into law, which ends up just making things worse for all clones. It was this episode where Echo stayed with Rex. And remember, we did see a live action version of Rex in the Ahsoka series and Ahsoka's Memories in the World Between Worlds in these Clone Wars era battles, including the Siege of Mandalore when he called out to her. But here, Rex, Singh, and GS-8 walk over an entrance to the sewer system, and actually, the clone assassin will shortly after this use this system to gain access to the secret meeting that's taking place, so, it's just kind of cool to see the animator set that up here. The assassin scope quickly locates Hauser up on the rooftops, and I love how quickly the assassin was able to spot Hauser. As a clone himself, he would be familiar with how they operate, and this makes him a uniquely deadly foe. So yes, joining Rex in this episode is Hauser and Fireball, Samson, and Greer. We've seen Hauser a few times throughout this series, and his complicated history with Crosshair plays a big part in this episode. When Hauser defied the Empire on Ryloth during Rescue on Ryloth in Season 1, Crosshair had him and his men arrested. Snitch! Then last season, in Season 2, Episode 14, Tipping Point, after Hauser was rescued by Rex, we learned that many of Hauser's men had died in a clone prison. As Singh and Rex approach the meeting location, there's also a red sign reading Delicious Gyros. Singh meets with Senator Chuchi, who of course is from Pantora. Most recently, she was seen in Season 2, Episode 14, Tipping Point, where she had helped Hauser and Echo and Gregor hide after escaping Imperial custody. During the Clone Wars, she was a staunch supporter of the Republic, and as she mentions here, this really left her and Singh on opposite sides of that war. And I also think it's interesting how Singh calls it Clone War and not Clone Wars, as if to say rather than several independent battles over several years to confront several separatist causes, it was all really just one war, one plot, centralize an Imperial military force under the Emperor, and that plot was successful and it is completed. They bemoan the lack of a strong central leadership to rally behind, a problem that won't really be solved until Mon Mothma and Princess Leia help formally organize the Rebel Alliance. So we're still some time away from Mothma's Bowman Massacre speech and her joining up with the crew of the Ghost and Rebels. I assume we might see a live action version of that in Andor Season 2. The clone assassin gains entrance to the meeting via the sewers and makes quick work of Greer. Rest in peace, Greer. But I like how Greer's armor had some green coloring, which makes me wonder if he was part of the 41st Ranger Platoon within the battalion of clone troopers that fought in the Battle of Kashyyyk in Revenge of the Sith. The assassin throws a thermal detonator in the meeting room, but Rex, Captain America's onto it and tosses it through an opening. Please notice how he had to be stunned multiple times before going down. Later in the episode, Crosshair confirms that they are doing experiments on these clones to make them extra deadly, whereas in past seasons, the mere single blast of the sun mode was enough, but not here. Hauser refers to the assassin as, quote, one of the shadows we keep running into. So a clone assassin named Clone X was briefly captured by the clones in Season 2, Episode 7, The Clone Conspiracy, before he bit down on the suicide shocker, killing himself. This is how, later in the episode, Rex knows to have the shocker removed before interrogating the operative. The clones recover an encrypted data puck from the assassin, and they take it back to Fireball at their home base to decrypt. Fireball also made its debut in the Tipping Point when he helped rescue Hauser from the Empire. Rex's base is on the planet Teth. Teth first appeared way back in the Clone Wars animated movie. It served as the base that the bounty hunters who kidnapped Rata the Hutt hid out in. Anakin, Ahsoka, and the Torrent Company, led by Captain Rex, stormed this citadel. So Rex must have remembered that mission and returned to the citadel to use it as their hideout. Also, yes, the architecture is similar to that of Jabba's palace. Teth was in the past inhabited by the Bomar Order. Their monasteries and castles were abandoned, and some would be converted by the Hutts into strongholds, and that that's why that architectural style is reflected in Jabba's palace on Tatooine. And I love that Rex is using these ruins as a base. It reminds me of the rebels using the Temple of Masasi on Yavin 4. It's kind of like when you're being hunted by a cold imperialistic force, you kind of have to embrace the ruins of the ancient world to stay off the grid of their fascist reach. Hauser confirms that the suicide shocker had been removed, and that, like Clone X, this clone's identification has been wiped. In this lighting, we can see that Rex's bald head has begun to sprout a hairline, though his scar from where Ahsoka removed his control chip is still visible, so we're kind of in this transition point between his baldness during the Clone Wars era and his appearance later on in Rebels. This gloomy lighting also reveals this tiny bit of light in the clone assassin's eye, which reminds me of how light reflected in the Emperor's eye under his hood in earlier episodes when he was in the vault on Tantus. And then back on that Tantus base, a new clone assassin has been activated.
Why have I been activated?
Yeah, he kind of says it like, why did you wake me up? It kind of seems like clone assassins exist in this trance-like state of suspended animation, just kind of awaiting orders. They are literal sleeper cells that have just been kind of nested in all these different remote locations. Makes us wonder how many of these are there? Rex asks if they're based on Coruscant or Darrow or Tantus. We know Coruscant and Tantus, but Darrow, if you remember, is a location from season 1, episode 14, War Mantle, and the following episode, Return to Camino, where conscripted troopers were being trained by clone commandos to replace them. Rex learns that the assassin was not only targeted Singh, but also Omega, so he decides to call the Bad Batch to warn them. And on the Marauder, Crosshair is regaining toothpick after dropping his on Barton 4, and as he chews it, notice how Omega mirrors him, reminding me of that adorable father-son dinner table moment in Jaws. Echo reveals he is missing his rendezvous with Gregor, and he'll have to pick him up after dropping the Bad Batch off on Teth. Like Hauser, Gregor was last seen in Tipping Point, and in Rebels, Gregor was one of the 2 older clones that were living with Rex on Stelos and the Lost Commanders. That second clone, and we'll get to him later. Wrecker and Batcher share a little bonding time while they travel, which makes sense, as they seem to share a soul, and they both have the IQ and EQ of a very smart dog. Later, they both go after Fireball's chow time with the same type of hunger. Echo gives Omega a new weapon, an energy crossbow. After her fuchsia-colored Zygerian energy bow from Ord Mantell in past episodes, this one has a new color, and this lemon lime surge green does kind of look like the lighter shade of green of Ahsoka's shorter blade. You know, like the one she held like a dagger. I also just love the functionality of this weapon. How the arms are tucked in at first, but then fan out when it activates, and then that plasma arrow just kind of juts out the front and then slides in and out as Omega pumps it. Echo says that he's made some interesting contacts across the galaxy, which is interesting. I'm sure we'll meet these folks later this season. Let me know who you think they are in the comments below. But I love this shot of the clone assassin's ship arriving on Teth because its triangular shape reminds us of a miniature Star Destroyer, but it moves so fast. He scopes out the ruins and he darts in for his infiltration. They gather inside Rex's command center, and Hunter notes that Rex's numbers are growing. Notice the 2 empty helmets from Rex and another. We were reminded of the pile of empty clone trooper helmets that Crosshair straightened up on Barton 4, but Rex is putting together a freed clone trooper force to free the others on Tantus. And yes, we do see Rex sometime after this in Rebels, and he is only with Gregor and Wolffe on Stelos, so something is gonna happen between Rex now and Rex then. Like, he's gonna convince Wolffe to join their cause, but like, what's gonna happen to all the other clone troopers he's with? Is he gonna succeed in liberating Tantus, and then all those clones will just like kind of live quietly, happily on that island with all the monkeys? Or are we in store for a darker ending to this Bad Batch series? Are we gonna see a mass Plan 99, and that's what happens to all the clones. Oh god. Omega tells Rex and Hauser about the M-count tests that are being done on the clone prisoners on Tantus. Rex thinks he's heard of this M-count term before, but he can't be sure. Rex would probably have familiarity with midichlorians from his time working with Jedi throughout the Clone Wars, but you'll notice that starting with the Mandalorian series, Lucasfilm seems to be moving away from the term midichlorians and embracing, I suppose, the less fan-triggering term of M-count. I personally would not mind hearing the term midichlorians again, if only to be reminded that these are microscopic life forms living in the blood and not something akin to, like, you know, blood pressure or like iron deficiency. Fireball comes in with food for chow time, cooking one of Gregor's recipes, and you know in Rebels on Stelos that Wolffe and Rex are going to be eating good. Like, I assume these 3 are like Henry and Polly in the joint and Goodfellas slicing garlic super thin and putting too many onions in the sauce. Crosshair reveals that Hemlock forces the clones to go through experiments and that those that survive come out of the process different. They tried a similar process on him, but it failed because he is defective. This puts more weight behind the theory that Crosshair's handshakes were a result of those failed experiments. Well, could Hemlock be like a genetically defective strandcast? Look, I know all male clones in the series are voiced by D. Bradley Baker. I'm just wondering if he could be like an offshoot of that, like a strandcast with an altered appearance, who's voiced by Jimmy Simpson. Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and this is a breakdown of the trailer for Spider Chum, which will finally answer the question of what exactly happened to all the people who just kind of like spiders, but don't have any superpowers beyond not being gross grossed out by how many eyes they have. Seriously, spiders have 8 eyes. Isn't that wild? Most of those eyes aren't even helping with depth perception. So what are they seeing? Ultraviolet radiation? The polarization of light?
Some kind of special arachnid aura that humans can't even imagine.
Marshmallow? Honey? Peppermint? Oh man, this is so much better. Wait, what the hell is Spider Chum? No matter what you're talking about, if you're talking a lot, One Shot Energy's voice drops can be the relief your throat needs. Go to oneshotenergy.com/newrockstars to get 10% off your order. The assassin clocks Omega and scurries off to send a message. The Orbesh on that screen says signal lost. Then the assassin speaks with Scorch, a clone commando who has shown up several times. Basically, whenever a clone commando is in charge or tells Hemlock something, it's probably Scorch. Scorch tells this assassin to send the coordinates and prepare for the recovery strike team. And to be clear, the captured clone assassin that they have in the stocks is named CX7. So that means there's gotta be at least 7 of them, maybe even more. It's kind of like that prank where you like number the chickens and release them in the high school, but you skip like number 11. So everyone spends that final week of school looking for chicken number 11. Am I making sense to you? If not, you didn't go to school in the South like I did. But the infiltrating assassin cuts the power line and we see Orbesh on that screen reading no signal. So they're in to interrogate the assassin that they captured. And Crosshair gets one look at him to know, oh shit, these things come in packs. There's at least 7 of them. So the infiltrator blows the thermal detonators, all hell breaks loose, and we get this awesome shot of the assassin quickly adjusting his aim after the doors open to snipe his fallen comrade. They got a code! We see more of his pro marksmanship when he shoots an electrical line that leads to a communication device, starting a chain reaction. A firefight breaks out. The room is covered in dark shadows, but I love how the lights from Wrecker's blaster give us a glimpse of the assassin. It's all just very cinematic and cool looking. As the recovery strike team closes in on Teth, the commander leading the squad dramatically turns to face us, revealing himself to be Wolffe. That's definitely Wolffe, guys. He's got the one spiky pauldron, the other one with the sigil on it. Wolffe obviously has a long history of minor appearances throughout the Clone Wars series, but in Rebels, he is one of the 3 with them on Stelos and the Lost Commanders. We learned that he served the Empire for a time before having his behavioral chip removed and defecting. And in that episode of Rebels, he did briefly betray the Ghost Crew by calling in the Empire before deciding to help them. So he's always kind of been coded as being somewhat more aligned with the Empire than the other clones who defected before he did. On to episode 7, Extraction. The clone assassin crawls out of the rubble along with Rex and Omega and the rest on the other side of the room. Pretty much no one died in this Bomar Monk Palace implosion, but that's okay. They ask if there's a way out of the spire and Rex chuckles, there's always another way, as he kicks a crate to reveal a secret passage out. I may be wrong, but this might be the same crate that previously had his and Hauser's helmets on it, so that might be their way of marking this spot of an escape hatch, or, you know, just stopping anyone from accidentally moving that crate to reveal the hole. Meanwhile, Wolffe's strike team arrives and Wolffe chews out the mystery clone assassin for causing so much ruckus for a mission where the objective was to bring the target back alive. So why, I ask, is this clone assassin so bad at following orders? As Rex and the batch descend, the clone assassin goes to cut them off, even going rogue after he was chewed out by Wolffe. He notices their descent and Crosshair sends the others down while he stays behind to try to deal with the assassin, which reminds me of Morpheus staying behind to deal with the agent while the others took Neo down through the walls in the hotel in the Matrix film. The way Morpheus was weakened going into that fight with Agent Smith, Crosshair's hand causes his aim to be off in this shootout. So he's basically a clone that was too defective to work for Hemlock's program, now taking on a clone who did make varsity. Later, the assassin's marksmanship is so good, it gives them all a huge setback when he shoots out the engine of their transport, which really has to hurt Crosshair's feelings especially. But yeah, while Rex is leading the others down, we get this one shot where we see his hand hitting the button and tally marks go all the way down his bracer down to his glove. These hash lines have always been part of his helmet and his armor, and I like to think that he might still be marking these, but now he might use them to count something different now that we're past the Clone Wars. Like maybe now he uses them to count the clone brothers he has saved, or the clone brothers he's failed to save. And I just like this recurring motif because scratching hash marks is something that we've seen Hunter do for a number of successful missions, and Omega did this to count the days on her cell wall in Tantus. I just kind of like that all the clones just, you know, make one mark at a time and don't really use any other kind of numerical counting system. Now, when Hauser lifts his helmet, Batcher immediately takes him to Slobbertown. So this Lurkahound is just thrilled to welcome some new brothers to the batch. Rex radios to Echoes Remora 1 that they are crashing in the jungle, marker 025, crawling out of the fuselage. Crosshair checks in on Omega.
You good?
Uh-huh.
Got your crossbow?
Yep.
Sure you can carry those supplies?
Yes.
The fact that it is Crosshair saying it initially makes it sound cold and like Snape-like, until you realize that he's actually genuinely concerned for the girl and wants to keep her safe. He even musters up some dad humor.
You're as bad as Hunter.
Oh, I'm much worse.
And seeing this little moment is what turns Hauser's opinion on Crosshair, and Crosshair later seals his dad role in this episode.
I'll draw his fire. Get to the rendezvous.
I don't like that idea.
Too bad.
So I really think the infiltration and extraction of these episode titles, beyond their literal applications, is the spiritual extraction of Crosshair's soul and his reputation among the other clones that he has wronged. So far, I'll say that this season of Bad Batch has been largely a Crosshair season, and I think the story artists realized how moving the Outpost episode was in season 2 and how much it really means to us, the viewers, to see a Cypher character. And Cypher, yes, I know I'm using another Matrix parallel here, but Cypher is really kind of the archetype of a character who has a choice to be free from a system, but chooses to stay plugged in, thinking that he'll be rewarded for that loyalty. But the system is not loyal. The system is the system because it views all parts of itself as disposable. And since this episode is clone versus clone, you'll notice we are back to using stun mode and smoke grenades as the batch makes their way to the extraction point. But I like that Omega still has her energy bow locked and loaded, like she kind of brought a knife to a pillow fight. There is a Wilhelm scream mixed in when Crosshair shoots the strike team transport. And contrasting these non-lethal blue lights that light up these trees, the clone assassin's deadly red blaster fire cuts through it all. Crosshair tackles the assassin into a raging river and both go over a series of waterfalls. The assassin pulls out a knife and Crosshair's helmet gets knocked off. And as they duel, this setting reminds me a lot of Warrior Falls in Wakanda in the Black Panther film, but that might just be because Ludwig Göransson composed that duel with amazing music, and he composed Mandalorian as well. And I did hear Kevin Kiner use some flute when the assassin and Crosshair are going at it. The assassin tries to drown Crosshair. So really, this plunge into the water we could see as a kind of baptism for Crosshair, like cleansing his imperial stink and making him sort of born again into the Brotherhood of the Batch. And to be clear, by smearing saliva over Hauser's face, Batcher was doing her own kind of baptism. Wolffe and Rex finally come face to face.
Reports said you were killed in action, that you went down aboard an attack cruiser. Oh, I did.
The synthy tones that we hear are Kevin Kiner's music from the Clone Wars finale episode. This is when they were making their way off of the Siege of Mandalore, and then right after Order 66 came through. That was when Rex and Ahsoka both went down in that cruiser, and then they had to bury their brothers from the 332nd. All of these empty clone trooper helmets that we've been seeing in these past few episodes just remind me of the graves that Ahsoka and Rex had to leave behind. Rex and Omega explain to Wolffe that the Empire is doing bad stuff with the clones, like experimenting on them. And they ask Wolffe to do the right thing and to let them go. And Wolffe is like, you know what? Nothing would make me happier than in another life just hanging out with you and Gregor and an ATTE, eating Gregor's overly onion sauce. And he lets them go. And I love how Rex in this conversation is like, open your eyes, which is, you know, pretty choice words given that one of Wolffe's eyes is injured. Echo's Remora 1 arrives to extract them, and Wolffe orders his men to stand down, and he says,
recover their fallen. Then we move out.
But, sir, they're traitors.
ah, the word traitor.
Traitor!
Didn't Kylo Ren call someone that?
Traitor!
But when the cost of loyalty is your own humanity, there are worse things to be than a traitor. But that clone assassin washes up on the other side of the falls, because if Han Solo can survive a waterfall drop in The Fugitive, anyone can. Why are they keeping this character alive, you may wonder? Well, since he's so bad at following orders, I do love this theory that this assassin could be the recovered body of Tech, whose last words were, when have we ever followed orders? Earlier, when Crosshair looked at this assassin through his scope, the assassin's heat signature showed nothing on the legs, like we might be looking at some body that was reconstructed with leg prosthetics. This clone assassin could be Tech, and that might be why he was so technologically reliant, like he kept hitting the buttons on the side of his armor and it kept fitzing out. I don't want it to be true, but I kind of want it to be true. So as Rex tells Hunter at the end of this episode, the only way to keep Omega safe isn't just to hide her on Pabu or literally anywhere else. It's to dig deeper in the one part of the overwhelmingly powerful empire that wants to suck her blood out, which is really just to force things back to Tantus for plot reasons. I think much darker secrets await these clones than what they want Omega for, and that's really gonna mess them up, and I can't wait to see it. Big thanks to Noah Chen for helping write this breakdown script. You can follow me at EA Voss, follow New Rockstars, subscribe to New Rockstars for more analysis of everything you love. Thanks for watching, bye.